Good. Your dog sounds like a velociraptor. Hi, everybody. Make sure highlighted here. It's fine. All right. Can everybody see me? My name is Cady Netland. Today I'm going to speak to you about bird glass collisions. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of myself here. I am the coordinator for bird safety at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. I'm responsible for coordinating education and outreach campaigns, generally to do with bird safe action. So that can be a variety of different action, but my specialty does tend to lie in preventing bird glass collisions, as well as recommendations for action people take around the lighting in and around their home, generally as it relates to collision. So majorly, my job is a lot of talking to people, which is my favorite thing to do. Like Kathy was just saying, spring migration is here. I'm up here in Ithaca, New York, but we have four major migration corridors here in North America, and spring migration can start as early as March, but it can also last all the way through the end of May. So we are kind of in the thick of it. We're still not seeing all of our spring migrants yet up here, but we are anxiously awaiting their return. So hopefully they're here soon. To start, it's really important to talk about when these birds are migrating and where. There's a lot of misconception that birds are migrating during the day, quite low. I think that generally comes from folks usually associating the word migration with our large water birds like Canada geese that come through. You see them during the day. But what we actually know is that 80% of North American migrant are migrating at night, and they're migrating much higher than we can see them. Um, and part of why this is really relevant to particularly our urban landscapes is that many of these bird species, which evolved to navigate in a very different night sky, maybe they evolved to navigate around what looks kind of like that image on the far left here, but now they're starting to come into landscapes that look a lot more like the image on the far right here. And to a bird that generally is navigating based on stars or in some way relationally to the sky where there's a lot of stars, the image to the far right, what actually looks the most like stars to their biology is potentially the urban landscape. And this can draw them into areas that are quite dangerous for them for a variety of reasons. It's not just big cities that can do this. Artificial light is going to attract birds wherever they're landing off of their migratory route. So this can be rural areas. In a lot of the US, we're seeing issues with large cattle farms, for example, that are very lit up at night, not necessarily what you would think of as an urban environment. Um, However, when they do land in these places, they're very frequently faced with something that looks a little bit like this. Now, this is again pretty big city example here, but the point is that even to our very detailed vision as human beings, it's extremely difficult to look at this image here and tell where the glass begins and ends. And the way that we're able to do it is because we learn visual cues around glass. We actually can't see glass either. So when they're coming into these environments, they're flying down from migration very frequently, and then they're trying to get back up to their flight path during those really critical dusk and dawn hours. They're often extremely confused by where vegetation is meeting glass, and then they're experiencing collision. And I'm going to play a short video here just to demonstrate what that can look like when large swaths of migrating birds are coming in off their migration paths and come into an area like this where vegetation may be meeting glass, or just maybe where a building is poorly positioned on their flight path, and what can be done to fix it. And then we're going to get into all the details. Make sure the sound's up.
This one is a northern water thrush and another Nashville warbler and a spectacular rose-breasted grosbeak.
When we were notified of the event that took place, and that's what put us into action to find what we can do to help.
Last year was 1,000, 1,500 birds in the fall. The year before was close to 1,000. This fall has been a total of 50. I have no hesitancy in saying this is an effective way to avoid collisions. There are lots and lots of solutions out there, and maybe each building requires something slightly different, but this certainly seems to be working here. It's time to look forward, be pleased, use this as an example for other buildings, and maybe reduce this massive cause of bird deaths across the whole country.
Okay, so that kind of puts a lot of information into a short form video, and now let's kind of break it down. Some of you may know a lot of this information, and some of you it may be completely new to you. So bear with me. Hopefully, if this is not new to you, I can answer some more detailed questions after. But let's talk about why birds fly into glass. Often people think that birds fly into glass because they're trying to access the inside of a building. That's very unusual. It can happen that transparency is the issue of glass, although that's more of a problem when it's transparent to vegetation. So the corners of glass buildings where you can see through that corner to vegetation. In general, these birds that are experiencing collision at the highest rates are small migratory songbirds. So they're very used to moving from protected habitat to protected habitat in very short, rapid movements, seeking prey, seeking shelter. And so, very frequently, what we're seeing with collisions is that they're actually trying to access what they see reflected in glass, and they can't distinguish that it's a reflection. And the reason that's really important to point out is because some of the ways that you may be told to treat this problem are put up on the inside of glass, and that doesn't resolve the issue of reflectivity on the outside of the glass. And so we really want to emphasize to people that the reflection is a really big problem for birds. And so any kind of treatment that you put up on your glass really needs to be on the outside. And I'm going to talk more about solutions in a bit as well. So to put this in context, glass collisions is actually one of the top three known anthropomorphic threats to global bird populations. So that's kind of a big statement. It falls in with really big threats like habitat loss that are very difficult to estimate, and domestic cats populations, which kill also a large number of birds that can be very difficult to estimate. But we do estimate that over 1 billion birds die in collisions with glass every single year just in the US. And some new research even indicates that this is an underestimate. Research that was following success outcomes in rehabilitation centers after collision. And to put that number in context, yes, we have a lot of birds in the world, but we are steadily losing these populations. This is the 2025 State of the Birds report that was put out by the Lab of Ornithology. And as you can see here, the vast majority of our bird species in the US are in extreme decline. Some of them more than 40%, some of them even higher. Some of our larger seabirds and things are doing pretty good. They've got things like duck stamps. They've got folks who are a bit more interested in their conservation, but some of these smaller birds that are experiencing this during migration, we're losing them in really high numbers to all of these different threats. Like I said, the most at risk, or at least the most recorded for collision numbers, are our migratory songbirds. That's for the reasons that I listed. They are often attracted to the vegetation that is frequently placed near where there's glass, so outside our homes, outside our businesses. They are often migrating and stopping over in areas that have a heavy amount of glass in them that is dangerous to them. Behaviorally, they're moving very quickly. They like to be protected, so um, they're not often scanning as they're flying, and their eyes are actually placed laterally on the sides of their heads, so their forward-facing vision is actually not super developed in terms of being able to recognize detail in front of them as well. So we've seen collision numbers do spike during migration season. This is even higher during the fall season when there's just more birds migrating with the juveniles. But it's important to remember here that no bird is safe from collision. Around 300 species have been documented in window strikes in North America. This ranges from grouse to raptors. We see a lot of American woodcock. Um, there's birds that are a bit larger than what we might think of as our migratory songbirds that are experiencing this. And there's also bird species that are in conservation concern or threatened or endangered status that have been recorded experiencing collision. So we know that it's a very large issue across all of our bird species. And something really important to clear up about this is that a lot of people may think that because there's a lot of glass on a skyscraper, for example, that big giant buildings covered in glass would likely be the worst places for this. But actually, what we found is that 99% of collisions are happening at low and mid-rise buildings. And there's two reasons for this. Number one, there are just far less skyscrapers in our country and in our world than there are low and mid-rise buildings. We have millions more low and mid-rise buildings. But also, as I just explained, we know that the vast majority of collisions are happening where there's vegetation, which means most of them are happening under our tree line, which tends to fall below 6 stories of a building. So even on these high rises that are, covered in glass and causing a lot of collisions, most of the collisions that are happening at that building are still happening below 6 stories. A good example was that McCormick Place Center that I showed. That's a one-story building, right? But because of its positioning and because of where it is on the migration path, it was just experiencing these vast numbers of collision. Um, and the reason I like to share this is not only to clarify, just the facts about the situation, but also because I think that this is a very empowering statistic. What this means is that the solution to this very big problem lies within collective action and it lies within all of our hands. Sometimes there's big conservation things that feel very big and feel like, oh, if I do something about this, it's not going to make as big of an impact. But in this situation, truly, 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 if you do something at your home and business, and if you inspire other people to do it, that's actually how we're going to solve this problem. So I just wanted to share that, so we're aware that that's really the way that we need to solve this problem. It's really in our hands. And speaking of that, we can talk about the fun part of this conversation, which is the solutions, because the problem part is really heavy and I know it's really big, but the solution's really simple. Yes, we can turn our lights out for birds. That can help reduce the danger of collisions to them. There's all kinds of other reasons why reducing artificial light in our landscapes are good for wildlife, are good for our health. However, if you turn your lights out, unfortunately, that is not going to solve the problem of collisions at your home. Um, Collisions are going to happen wherever there is glass, whether your lights are on or not, um, particularly where there's vegetation, particularly where you're seeing birds migrating through your area. So, how do we do that? Like I said, we're always going to make sure that our treatments are placed externally on the outside of the glass. This is so, so, so critical when you do come into a situation like sometimes there will be a glass railway or railing that is it's you can see through both sides. And so sometimes people are like, do I treat both sides or do I just treat one side? A good way to look at that is to try to observe that structure throughout the day. And usually you can identify if it's reflective from both sides for most of the day, or if it's the issue is transparency, or if it's only reflective from one side and it solves the problem. But generally, best practice for single standing structures that are see-through is to treat both sides, as hard as that may be. Um, there are some really simple guidelines for bird safe patterns. Patterns are a great way to break up this glass, and there are spacing guidelines that have been tested, and they are for solid shape patterns, so dots or anything else that makes a solid shape on glass. That's going to be a 2-inch spacing. Some places in the world, a 2-inch by 4-inch spacing is okay. That's places that don't have our little baby species like kinglets and hummingbirds. Those are really small birds. We have them up here in Ithaca, and we're going to want that 2 by 2 inch pattern so that when they come up to it, they still are perceiving that spacing as too small for them to very easily get through. For a line pattern, still the same. We want it to be 2 inches apart. These are all for two-dimensional treatments, so treatments that you are applying directly to the glass. That can be a vinyl decal, that can be drawing on the glass, anything that you're putting directly on there. For something that you're hanging in front of the glass, so it's not being placed directly on it, it's a three-dimensional treatment. The spacing can actually be 4 inches, so a little bit more wiggle room. A great company for this is Acopian Bird Savers. I'll talk about it. Not 100% sure the exact reasoning for this, but we speculate that it's because of the shadow that the hanging treatment can cast on the glass. It can kind of break up that space a little bit more. The wind moving, whatever that is going to kind of cover that space. So whichever way has been tested, and it does seem to work. So how do these things get tested? How do they find out about that spacing? The American Bird Conservancy began a testing process called tunnel testing in 2010, and this is used to determine a material's threat factor. So the lower the threat factor, that means the less threatening the product is, the more effective the test pattern. And by doing this, they were able to determine what that pattern is, and they continue to test individual companies' products that are trying to come out with purchasable products for people to solve this problem. Okay. So the other big message that I want to get across before I get into some of the DIY projects you can do and other solutions you can purchase for this is aside from putting it on the outside of the glass and some of those recommendations, what we really want people to know is that single sparse decals don't work. I know that there's a lot of companies that put out that big hawk silhouette or even window gems. If those aren't spaced 2 by 2 inches apart and placed externally, it's not going to work. And in fact, in some preliminary research, having sparsely spaced or single decals may increase the risk of collision, which, when you think about it, again, these birds that are liking to travel from protected habitat passageway to protected passageway kind of makes sense from their point of view. But anyway, um, we want to get this across because sometimes people with great intention, they try to put something up on their window and without following these exact guidelines, it won't work. And then they'll give up or they'll feel discouraged from treating that window. And I just want to emphasize that some of these things really do work, but it just does have to be like the correct spacing for it to be as effective as it can be. And the things that most folks tend to worry about when talking about window treatments is this going to work? Um, is it going to be expensive? And is it going to interrupt my view out of my house or out of my windows? So is it going to work? Yes, and not necessarily 100% of the time. No collision deterrent is 100% effective. I like to tell people birds will fly into a brick wall if they're being chased by something. However, a reduction of 99 to 95% is a colossal decrease. That is an extremely, extremely effective product. A lot of these products are being designed very specifically with the knowledge that people would like to be able to see out their window easily. These products are for bird lovers, right? We want to be able to look out our windows. We want to be able to watch the birds at our feeders. So products and companies like Feather Friendly, for example, they're designing these products with that in mind. And often it can be hard to know that because the images that they're placing on their websites, for example, are meant to show you how apparent they will be to birds on the outside of the glass. But what they're not showing as much is that they're actually a lot less visible from the inside of your house. And they're designed to be that way. And they can be quite easy for your eyes to adjust to. So I just wanted to emphasize that. And there's a wide variety of which ones are more visible, which ones are less visible, and it's just about finding which one's right for you. Cost efficient. You can go all the way as cost efficient as to buying a foam roller for like $2 or $3, cutting it so that it's 2 inch spacing, dip, taking a little paintbrush, painting the dots, and just rolling it down your window before migration season. Boom, it's done. You wash it off after if you don't want to keep it up all year. You keep the roller on hand for the next season, and you've done something to really protect birds in your area, especially migrating birds. Um, that can be stencils, paint pens, hand the pens to your kids or grandkids and let them go buck wild on the outside of the windows if you don't you don't really mind and you don't mind having to wash it off later. Or you can go buy freehand paracord, and there are instructions on a website that I'm going to send to all of you for how to do all these projects at home. And it can be very cost effective. A little bit less cheap, but still very cost efficient, are a lot of retrofit products for purchase. The great news for places like Ithaca, where all of our houses are very old, is that if you have exterior insect screens on your home, about 2 inches away from the glass, then your house is already bird safe. You don't even have to treat the glass because they've already got a little trampoline on the outside that they can bounce off of. A company called Feather Friendly that I mentioned, fantastic window treatments. One kit to treat, your standard window is about $20 and will last over 15 years. So the durability of some of these products for how inexpensive they are, it's totally worth it for the impact you can have. And again, all of these are listed on the website that I will be providing. Also, really important when you're choosing whichever treatment that you're looking to move forward with is to be considering what is behind the window and what is reflected in the window. If your glass is a problem because it's reflecting dark forest, so some of the folks I talked to out in like Seattle, Washington, for example, a black dot treatment's not going to show up super well when it's in that reflection. So you want to think, like, what is this glass reflecting during the day that's attractive to birds? And what color or what product would probably stand out the most on that background? And we don't have to overthink it. Sometimes, folks are like, oh, but avian vision is very different. It is very different, but it's not so different that a very large color contrast like this um, would be registered very differently to them than it is to us. So just important to consider what's being reflected, make sure the color that you choose is going to stand out on that background. And as a note, for anyone who's interested in architecture, in design, in technology, there is so much more to bird safe design than just retrofitting existing buildings. There are architecture firms that are starting to learn more about this, glass manufacturers that are starting to learn, how could I etch a pattern into glass? I could digitally print it onto the glass. I could 3D print it onto the glass. I could maybe use a laser cutter to like etch it into the glass. So creating all these different glass technologies, but also just creating creative designs that maybe don't focus on single pane glass as much. And that is also highlighted on the website, and American Bird Conservancy has a great resources for this as well. I'm going to provide all of those to you, I promise. So this is the website I've been talking about. I will send it into the chat as well. I am here as representative not only of the Lab of Ornithology, but also our partnership that I will talk about at the very end of this presentation, the Bird Collision Prevention Alliance. This is a website that I personally created. So if you have any problems with it, you just shoot me an email and I will see what I can do. Here you can find all those glass treatments I just mentioned, recommendations for your lighting, for your landscape, how to get involved in your local community that's doing work on this, how to get involved in the BCPA. Maybe you want to stream a short documentary about this at your local library. All those things, you can find them here. So I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to send it in the chat before I leave as well. And on that note, how can you get more involved? I like to throw this in because we've got a lot of folks who live in apartments and things, and they can't really retrofit their windows necessarily. Like Kathy was talking about, this is this is a lab tool called Birdcast. It was created in collaboration with some other universities. I also just totally revamped this website. If you ever use the old Birdcast, it used to be a little bit trickier to navigate. Here you can find all different kinds of tools to track migration. This is live maps, so you can watch migration live in your area during migration season, forecast maps that you can check and see when migration is going to be high. You can check your local dashboard. How many birds were here last night? Or how many birds were here 10 years ago? I don't know if it goes as far back as 10 years ago, but I know it goes a couple of years back. And then there's also a tool where you can sign up for migration alerts in your area. I think there's at least over 200 cities that are listed that you can sign up for alerts for. And at first, this was really useful for folks who are just looking for good times to go birding. But over the last year, we've really identified this as a great way to get messaging to people that it's a really good time to retrofit their glass and turn their lights out for birds. So if you want to kind of prioritize different times of the year to do this treatments, this is a great way to check and be like, birds are going to be coming through my area really heavy in, a couple days. So I should probably turn my lights out. I should probably put my Copian bird savers up, get ready for them to come in through here and be safe. Another way that you could get involved or keep in the loop is that partnership that I just mentioned. This is the Bird Collision Prevention Alliance. We are founded by over 100 organizations that do work either in collision prevention or lighting advocacy. It is a huge range of groups. It's extraordinarily collaborative, and the goal is to try to create really combined forces to have bigger impact, both nationally and even internationally, particularly at the moment up through Canada with our partners, Flap Canada. The mission here is, again, working together, promoting innovative glass treatments, responsible lighting practices, doing things like this, being able to pop in and give a presentation, and encourage people to get involved in this kind of issue. There are all kinds of different working groups that make up this partnership that address the different aspects of this issue. We also have a YouTube channel where we've recorded our virtual summit, and on the website, there are all kinds of downloadable, printable, shareable materials, guides, guidelines, recommendations, videos for kids, videos for, your friends. So anything that you're looking for to be a good advocate on collision prevention, this is a really good one-stop shop to find those things. Everything's disappearing off my page. So to get involved, you could join the contact list, or if you could even want to participate in a working group. We've got plenty of folks who have signed up just as individuals who are interested in, keeping an ear to the ground here on this. So you can email this email, or I'll put my email in the chat as well, and you can email me directly. I manage that email anyway, so it's all going to be going to the same person. There's lots of things you can do that aren't just joining this partnership, that aren't even retrofitting your home if it's something that's just not available to you, although that's ideally what you would do. But for example, I rent, so it's kind of difficult to retrofit. You can participate with an associated local organization. You guys are all already involved with your local Audubon. So take it a step further, volunteer, find out maybe there's someone in your group who really wants to retrofit their windows, but they can't get up on a ladder to do it. Let's all help each other to get these retrofit ups and start protecting our birds. You could join collision monitoring. You could report collisions to dbird, which is the website. And this is again all on the site if you're interested in exploring. You only have limited time, and there's so many things you can do to help on this. So I just want to say thank you. I really want to leave some time for talking here, for chatting. Um, you know, Even if you don't remember every solution that I mentioned here, I think the point is there are so many ways to get involved on solving this really, really big problem. And the solution to this problem really lies with all of us. We certainly can advocate for big corporations to do something about this. We certainly can try to push for policy and legislation that supports this. I highly encourage that you do so. But in the meantime, short-term action, action that you can take immediately, can make a huge difference. So I'm here to answer any questions. That website is there for you. It's why I built it. And yeah, I just want to hear if anyone has any questions. I'll send that website in the chat, and I will put my email in there as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Cady. That was awesome.
Yeah,
And
thank
saw
you so
some
much.
good new practical ways to do the window treatments. So I see there's a question here from Karen. Are there solutions for screen enclosures as well?
Karen, I think I'm going to need a little bit of clarification on this question. If you're able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, so we had a screen enclosure around our pool,
Okay.
and a hummingbird flew right into it, and of course got stuck. Um, and so that was very sad.
Okay. Yeah, that's really tricky. We sometimes will have issues with netting or screening up in New York as well, but more for agricultural reasons when people put netting or other material around trees. It's not my expertise area, but I do know that there are recommendations for any kind of perforated material that any gapping be a certain size, as small as possible to keep birds from being able to get in at all is ideal. I think it was like an eighth an inch in diameter.
And no, it's
Um,
meant to keep mosquitoes out. So
right.
so it looks invisible as you go by.
Yeah. I wonder if it's something that American Bird Conservancy would have more information on. They tend to deal with kind of a range of the different kinds of materials that can threaten birds more than the Collision Prevention Alliance because we focus on glass collision. But it does remind me of the issue. There can be an issue with for example, wind turbines, much smaller. You'll hear about it a lot, about wind turbines and birds, but it's a much smaller problem than glass collisions. However, the problem is the invisibility of the material. And I do know that they found that even painting one fan black made the visual more apparent to birds. So I wonder if it would be a worthwhile sacrifice of aesthetic to be able to paint the material in some way to, or color it in some way to make it not invisible. But I would say ABC is a good resource.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions? You can unmute yourself if you don't want to type it. See if it, of course, the dog's gonna bark.
Cady, the building that we're building is going to be net zero energy and LEED Gold, and we're working with Guardian Glass.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
Yes,
great.
someone named Heidi.
Yes, Heidi Trudell. She is on the
And
communications group for the Bird Collision Prevention Alliance with me, and I've known her since uh, I got introduced to this work because I did a Resilience Corps AmeriCorps program in Maine.
oh, oh,
And so I was really young and I got thrown in with a group called Bird Safe Maine that is lovely. And she's been doing this work for a long time. So I knew her even back then, and it's very cool to work with her. I'm glad she knows her stuff. She knows the
apparently we're
technical
gonna,
stuff about
yeah,
glass.
apparently we're gonna get to have something that's very state of the art. So we're excited.
Awesome. You'll be in good hands.
Okay, so anyone else have any questions? Um, I can speak for myself. I got feather friendly on my front windows, and the visual, you can see right through them. I actually take photos through mine, at birds that come to the bird bath. You can't see it. And it's very effective. We have another question. Let's see.
I think
Oh,
these are me just
that's
sending resources in the chat.
resources. Yeah, so everyone, before we close out, go ahead and grab those links. I'll leave them up so you can grab them and go look at them at your leisure.
Oh, those videos that I shared, if that's something that you're interested in sharing with on your social media, with your friends, with whoever, those are actually up on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's YouTube channel.
Oh,
So if that's something that you're interested in sharing, I will send those links in the chat as well.
yeah, that sounds good. That would be great.
Yeah, feel free to share those.
Okay, lots of good resources for something that we all can do, for sure. Yeah.
That's the hope.
Have you ever helped, like, I do, there's one school I visit that they have a two-story and it's a glass window. And, what do you tell a school when resources are limited?
Yeah. I think that there's some really great organizations that are working on structures for doing this because the best place to start is with curriculum, and some school systems are not open to any changes in curriculum whatsoever. Um, some places are a little bit more flexible. Yarmouth Elementary is a really good spot in Maine that did incorporate some curriculum about birds into their third grade class, and then they ended the class with the kids painting the outside of the windows before migration season.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and if you can get the kids to care first, I think with any school, including I now am working in a university environment, so I have to deal with kind of the red tape of Cornell a little bit. Um, I find that even at a university level, they're much more motivated by the interest of the student body than by what they might consider an outside perspective. So if there's ways to get children involved in after school programs and, you know, learning about something like this, and they start to care, kids will not stop talking about it until something is done. Children are some of our best advocates, actually. The minute that they feel a sense of injustice, particularly about this problem, they're like, why would we not paint our windows for birds? I don't understand. Like they can be really good advocates. So if there's any way to get kids this information, in a way that you have their parents' permission,
Yeah,
um, once they know about it, they will be the best advocates to their school.
it's great. Okay, so everyone's had a chance to pull these links, and yeah,
Yeah.
we appreciate your time.
Of
My
course.
dog
Thank
is
you so no, I love dogs. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is so wonderful that you guys have a recurring event where you learn more about birds, and I wish I knew about something like this earlier. So just thank you for having me, and
Yeah, and we'll
I hope
spread the
everybody
word.
learned something new.
Yeah, that's excellent. And yeah, we'll spread the word, and we'll have this on our YouTube channel so people can watch and learn, the people that
Great.
visit that. And yeah, we'll all, pay attention to our windows and keep the birds safe. So everyone, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Same place, same time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. We appreciate it. And good night,
Okay.
everybody. Have a great
Bye
evening.
now.
Bye.
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 Bye.